Good evening and welcome again to Women to Women. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess for tonight with two very special guests. In fact, this is kind of groundbreaking for Women to Women. We're having a panel discussion for the first time with questions that our listeners, our viewers and our listeners have sent us via email or just mailed into our P.O. boxes. So this is kind of interesting. These are issues that women out there in particular are asking us. We're not experts. We're just going to toss these questions around and help you via our experience, so to speak. So I hope everyone is going to enjoy this. Please remember, when our address comes back up, you can email us, you can write us, you can visit us on Facebook, and you can reply back and find out exactly how you thought the program went. So welcome. And we want to thank our sponsors tonight, Carpa Nevada LLC, importer of fine Portuguese olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and international teas, as well as Vila Basque, home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo. So let's introduce our guest to you tonight. We have Lisa Davis, and I'm going to ask Lisa in just a moment to briefly explain what she does. Her work is so important in the community here in Carson Center. And I'd also like to introduce you to PJ DeGrosse. She has been with us before, and I'm going to ask PJ to just briefly tell you what she does here in the community as well. So, Lisa, let's begin with you.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome.
I am the DARE officer as well as the Juvenile Services Coordinator for Carson City Sheriff's Office.
Okay, so you're working not only outside of the school systems, but in.
Yes.
All right, and we'll get back to that in a minute. And PJ.
I am PJ DeGrosse, founder of webofsupport.com. It's an online-based soldier adoption program, and we support troops all over the United States, from bases all over the United States.
And both of these guests tonight are here because they have been so willing to share their experiences and to, as we know, this program is all about the support and encouragement for all women out there, regardless of your ages or your circumstances. And we want you to understand, like we have come to understand, that there is purpose in our life, and we are very valuable to many people. So if you're discouraged, listen for some advice tonight. Now, I'm just picking it randomly out of this basket. The first question comes from locally, okay? Sometimes I give the person's name, sometimes I give the location, but if they've asked me not to, then I don't. So I will respect the privacy on this question. How do you keep a relationship healthy? How do you keep a relationship healthy? Now, before we get into this, we could be talking about any kind of a relationship, you know, a parent-child, husband, wife, brother, sister, friendships. So I'm not quite sure exactly what relationship, but perhaps they all have something in common. PJ, when we talk about relationships, we know they suffer from time to time.
Right.
We know that they go through their ups and downs, but from your point of view and from your experience, you are a married woman, you have a wonderful relationship with so many people in the military. What keeps those relationships healthy?
Well, you know, this is what I say. Any relationship has to be unconditional loving on a consistent basis. And I think the biggest deal breaker for relationships are expectation. A lot of people expect other people in relationships. It can be with your girlfriends, with your family members, with your spouse, boyfriend. Just because I think a certain way and just because I would react to something doesn't mean that my spouse or my friend is going to react the same way.
Correct.
Now, if I expect them to react that way and they don't, then there's a disappointment. And so I truly believe that when you love someone, whether it's a girlfriend, family member, whatever, and if you just love them on an unconditional basis consistently, just love them for who they are, love the relationship for what it is, and don't expect things from them that they're not capable of doing. It's kind of like the Peter Principle, when you expect more from someone and they can't provide it.
And I think I also hear you saying that being able to allow space around the individual's response, because response is quite frankly, often are not what we wanted to hear because feelings have been hurt, something's been taken out of context, a conversation, we come across sometimes as very judgmental, but I think you've hit a key point there, PJ, in that when you love someone, it's a consistent loving, and nobody is perfect. So we really have to learn to listen carefully to that tone of voice. We have to learn to listen to that personality that's coming to us. And so I think loving on a consistent basis, not taking that love away.
Exactly. And I have to tell you something. This is true. And it's a personal thing about my relationship with my husband and I. My husband had been single man for 20 years when I met him. He was never marrying again. And we met, and obviously we were getting married. And some of his friends said to him, "What is it about her that made you want to get married? You confirmed bachelor, being single for 20 years like that." And he said something that I kind of turned around and said, "Is that coming out of him?" Because it was so profound. He said, "She lets me be who I am, and she doesn't punish me for it. She doesn't judge me for it."
Yes.
And I think that's huge.
That's huge. It is. Lisa, in working with children and their parents and working with a lot of colleagues, adults in school and outside, in the public, what do you think makes for a healthy relationship?
I think it comes back to the unconditional love, for one thing, and time. Sometimes we get so busy and we're so caught up in everything that we're interested in that we tend to forget that we need to spend time with the people that matter to us the most. And I think that just healthy time, eating dinner together, having breakfast together, just walking on the beach. I mean, taking just a few minutes. And it doesn't have to be a lot of conversation. You can have some quiet time, but it's just that togetherness that I think that we are missing sometimes.
And for children growing up, because we are old enough to remember supper tables and breakfast tables on weekends, etc., and being included in your parents, being included in the other adults in their conversation, it's a form of respect being given to you as a child, and you like that. You like that. And it's an appreciation being shown towards you from very early on. So I think that you're both very right on target, that not being judgmental. As a teacher, I have such high standards, for myself and for my kids. And I don't always reach those standards, and I'm expecting my kids. And if they don't reach it, as PJ said, it can be very disappointing. So we need to acknowledge that great amount of time in building relationships are what make healthy relationships.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's go on. Okay, let's see who this is from. This is from Sharon from Fernley. How does a mother from the 70s keep her children of the 90s and beyond talking regularly to each other? So there's some generation gap there. So this mother, who was apparently a mother during the 1970s, and her children are now, they grew up in the 80s and the 90s. They're having a hard time finding that time on a regular basis to talk together and spend time together. And she wants to know, how do you work that out? You're a mother, Lisa?
I am. I have 3 children.
And you're a working mom.
I'm a working mom, and we went through a very painful divorce at one point in time, a number of years ago. And I found that I had to pull back and make it a priority to spend that time with my children when we were going through a traumatic incident, okay? And sometimes that communication breaks down, and you just have to be patient enough and willing to wait it out. Because sometimes communication with family members is a process.
Yes.
That's true.
I remember wondering, even back in the 50s and 60s, why there was a lot of tension sometimes in my family between the members. And I even had tension with my sister growing up. So I think it's a normal part of family life. I mean, I don't know of a family that exists or did exist, even with my grandparents, where there weren't issues, we call them issues today, that had to be worked out over a period of time.
Right.
But what are you doing today, PJ, to kind of stay in contact with family?
With my family? My son and I have a very unique relationship because there's only 20 years between us. And I was divorced when he was 2 and never remarried again until he was 10. So I was his mom, but I was his buddy, his pal. He was my buddy, my pal. And, you know, we developed this very unique relationship, which I think is very indicative of parents who have been divorced, and especially single moms with boys. Not so much with girls, I think, as much with boys, because boys at some point take the position of wanting to be your father, which is what happened. As he got older, he became my father, and you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. And but the thing with my son and I was, I learned this from my mom years ago. She said, show him an enormous amount of love and understanding. And don't minimize who he is. Don't minimize the things that are important to him by saying, oh, no, I don't want to talk about it, or that's not right, or whatever. Because I think with my son and I, and we've had some good battles, and because he's strong-willed and so am I, but the main thread that runs through it all is that we love each other a lot. But I think the main thing is you have to allow your children to be themselves. Let them have room to grow, like you said before, in a relationship.
And both of you are hitting on an important point here in remarriages. You know, they were there first, the kids. They established that relationship with mom before anybody else ever came in. And sometimes a new person can almost be perceived as a threat. What's going on? Things are changing. I don't like this necessarily. So, and it only comes, and a very important aspect that you mentioned, PJ, is don't minimize the time or the personality or the character of your child, because there's going to be a new member in the family. They're very important. They're just as important. Okay, we'll come right back. Please don't go away. We have a lot more questions on this groundbreaking show.
When a disaster strikes our region, will you be ready? Learn about sheltering in place. Since each emergency is different, make sure you plan for alternate routes away from your neighborhood. Plan meeting places and long-distance phone numbers if you are separated. Assemble food, water, medicines for at least 3 days, and a portable radio to stay informed. Remember, make a plan, assemble a kit, stay informed, be ready. For more information, contact your local emergency manager.
Pets of the Homeless is a non-profit, all-volunteer organization that provides pet food and veterinary care to the homeless and less fortunate in local communities.
With donations from the public, we're able to provide homeless shelters with crates, bowls, cleaning materials, so that homeless with pets can come into homeless shelters and get the services that they need to get out of homelessness.
Are you looking for a healthier lifestyle? A more nutritious diet? Do you care about quality? If your answer is yes, or if you are just curious, come into Villa Basque Deli and Cafe right here in Carson City, Nevada. Discover fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, vintage balsamic vinegars, and a wide assortment of international health teas provided by distributor Carpa Nevada LLC. In addition to these terrific items, Villa Basque is also the home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, handmade on the premises from Pete's secret family recipe. Satisfy your culinary curiosities. Don't delay.
Welcome back to the second portion of Women to Women. We're on groundbreaking territory here today, and we're having a good time with it. We're taking all of your questions that you have written into us over the past several months, and we've put them together. And so what we're doing is we're kind of sharing ideas that might be of value to you. And we want you to recognize and to realize that we are not experts in the field, but we've had experience. And that experience has helped us through many ordeals. And we recognize that life is a series of ups and downs, but not to become discouraged. So we're on our third question, which is, what would you like to tell young women to remember as they age? Now that has an implication that we're already over the hill, okay? But we're not. So it is important, and you know, generationally speaking, in the many different tribes from the Middle East and from our own Native American tribes, and in our own grandparents' and great-grandparents' time, it was an oral sharing of traditions, of values, of perspectives. So it was really the duties and the obligations of the older women to help the younger women learn how to cook, how to keep house, how to sew, how to do various tasks around the house, inside and out. So if I put this question to you, PJ, today, younger women who are struggling, they may be single moms, they may be without a job, they may be without a boyfriend, they may feel that they're unattractive for various reasons, or they may feel like they just can't make friends. What's wrong with me? What would we tell young women?
Well, I'm going to lighten it up and just say moisturize, moisturize, moisturize to begin with.
Okay.
Okay, so what I tell younger women, especially some of my soldiers that I have, is don't lose who you are as a woman.
Meaning
That a lot of young women are very swayed by what other people think. Mm-hmm. They get into terrible relationships with men who define who they are, who tell them how to act and tell them what to be. And a lot of young women who don't have a self-confidence and don't have a presence of who they really are, they give it all up. So they give themselves up to someone who will potentially turn around and abuse them. I say the main thing is always know who you are. And if you are having issues with who you are, go to seminars, go to your church, get together with your girlfriends, but keep your own essence, be strong, and don't depend on other people, to do things for you. The main thing I say is, and I see it a lot, don't give up who you are for anyone. You need to maintain who you are and be strong. And yes, did I learn the hard way? Oh yeah, I made all those mistakes like every young woman does. And it took me a long time to figure it all out and get my confidence. People used to say, geez, you look so self-assured and so confident and all this stuff. When inside, it wasn't really authentic because I had a lot of issues about being worthy and did I look pretty enough? Was I thin enough? And so I think the main thing is find out who you are and don't let anyone change you from your resolve.
Wise advice. Lisa, you work with young women of the junior high, sometimes of the elementary. What are some of the, I don't want to use the word complaints, but what are some of the worries that those young women may show within the classroom in their discussion or toward their own classmates? What do you notice?
A couple of things. A lack of confidence. I've had girls come out and say, I found my voice in DARE. I can't think of a higher compliment from that because girls sometimes are taught, be pretty, be nice, be quiet. And I do the exact opposite in the classroom. I tell them, today you're going to find your voice and you're going to introduce yourself. And if you do it too quietly, I'm going to make you do it again. And we do it with a sense of humor and a lot of fun because young people all across the board need to learn that to become resilient, you need to have a healthy sense of humor, a sense of a detachment from whatever the problem is, and one healthy, caring adult that just believes in them. And so we provide that in the classroom. Another thing that girls come up against is the girl bullying issues.
That is huge, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. And so having to deal with the girl, the mean girl syndrome can be quite the thing to deal with.
But I'm not sure that maybe we've just broadcast it and brought it out into the public, into the open, so to speak, to discuss this bullying. Because I can remember it existed when I was in elementary school, and it had to be dealt with. And it was very frustrating and hurtful when you came across somebody that just seemed bent on teasing, hurting, verbally and physically, at times when there were no adults around to take care of the problem.
There is a difference, though.
Okay. Help us.
I had to go through classes to find this out because I kept thinking the same thing. We used to be able to get away from it. When we left school and went home, we got away from it.
Right.
Today, in the age of texting, in the age of internet and emails, it doesn't go away.
It's right
Our
there.
young people are not getting away from it like we did. That's the big key difference.
And I think, Lisa, what both you and PJ are also encouraging, young women, whether they are fifth graders in the DARE program or they're in junior high, which is an age of change, all kinds of voice changes, body changes, both inside and out, and then in high school, where you're kind of expected to be able to have a group, have a niche, fit in. There is a time to just kind of step back, listen, and observe. Because sometimes our mouths get us into a lot of trouble. And we say things that we don't really mean or shouldn't be saying.
Right.
And we cause some of our own problems. So my mother once said to me, Carol, you wear your heart on your sleeve. Too many people know you're too sensitive. So she said, instead of getting involved in the conversation, just listen. Or if you decide that you don't want to be a part of that conversation, just excuse yourself and go off. Now, true, we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have texting and all the techie equipment. But I think that advice should be shared with our youngsters growing up, is that you don't have to be a part of every group. You don't have to contribute verbally on every conversation or issue. Learn to observe and to listen carefully to what's going on around you. And take it home, take it back, and think about it. Okay. Good job, women. All right, what's up this time? All right. Here's one, Lisa, that's right down your alley, and I think as a parent, PJ, yours too. What can I do as a parent to keep my child from using drugs? I'm not always there.
I get that question a lot, and there are quite a few things. Number one, unconditional love. It's going to come back to that.
Right.
The second thing that I would suggest is talk about it. Be upfront and honest. We don't have to share all of our past experiences. We want to be careful not to glorify drugs or alcohol, but at the same time, we want to recognize that our children know us, and we want to be honest. Talk about the consequences of drug use, jail, the effect on the body, the fact that our children love to be smart.
But Lisa,
Yes.
I hear coming into this discussion, sometimes kids don't think it's ever going to happen to them.
That's right.
They
huge.
listen and it goes right in one ear and out the other because they think, this doesn't apply to me. I don't hang out with kids who use drugs. I don't want to take drugs. But you know what? One day down the road, slowly but surely, they're testing it. They're trying it. What happens?
That's why it's so important to talk. Talk about the consequences of it. Set the boundaries. One time I heard from a doctor that was doing some training on parenting. Set the boundaries. Set them far enough away from the danger so that if they cross that boundary, they're not going to be in that danger zone.
Can you give us an example?
When she explained that, my children were very little. And when I was, we lived on a very busy street. And I had set the boundary my children could play in the backyard, not in the front. Okay? And when we set those boundaries, the front yard, there was enough distance between our front door to the busy street that we could catch them before they got hurt. I look at that the same way with drugs. You can set those boundaries far enough away. Set the boundaries about friends. Keep track of what kind of friends that they're hanging out with, and if they're changing their friends. Meet those parents. Set the boundaries as to the time of day that they should, what's their curfew.
Right, regardless
Things
of
like
their
that.
reaction to it.
Yes.
All right, PJ, as a mother, did you ever have to set any boundaries? Did you ever have to worry about drugs as your children were growing up?
As the mother of a boy, single, hello. I remember one time, he was about 13 years old and told me that he was going to the school. They had a big event. And I went to school to pick him up, and the place was dark. And across the field comes my kid, drunk, my 13-year-old kid, wobbling over, laughing, thinking it was really funny. And I grabbed him, of course, threw him in the car. And he wasn't real happy because he just wanted to go home, throw up, and go to sleep. But I made him sit there all night long while I preached and yelled at him, Mom, let me just go to sleep. No, you're not going to sleep. God forbid, what if something happened to you out there? You know, but I think it goes back to communication with your kids. I told my son always, don't lie to me.
Right, right.
There's nothing worse than lying. I can take the worst truth you can dish out to me.
And we can work through
but
it.
Don't lie to me. And so I said, if you want to drink a beer, you come here and sit there in front of me and drink a beer. If you want to do a drug, like if you want to smoke marijuana or something like that, then you come home here and we'll talk about it.
That was when he was 13.
Believe it or not, I couldn't believe, we lived in New York at the time, he had a keychain that was like a little stash thing, whatever you call it, had like a little tweezers in it, like a roach clip or whatever. And it wasn't used or anything, but I found it in his room, and I grabbed it, and we had a big discussion. Mom, it's just a fun thing. I go, no, it's not a fun thing. Who gave this to you, and why do you have it? Because it's not just a fun thing. First of all, it's illegal to have this, and it's not a fun thing. So I think that, again, you go back to the peer pressure of the kids. The kids will say, or the bullying, oh, you know what, you're nothing. You can't hang out with us if you don't try to smoke or you don't do drugs or anything. I was amazed at the meth problem in Carson City. I've never seen it. I don't even know where people are. But I think it doesn't really matter if it was 10 years ago, 20 years, there was always something, you know, and as long as, I think, don't you agree that as long as you have an open communication with your children?
And it's got to be an ongoing conversation.
Right. Yes.
It's not a lecture. You have to be very careful not to lecture them. Just make it a conversation and make it about a current event.
And you know, I think that in all of this communication, reason can be applied. Let's have a reasonable conversation. All right, we're talking about our family. We're not talking about our neighbor. We're not talking about your friends down the road. We're talking about this family. And there's a responsibility within this family to one another for good health as well as for good sense, common sense. And when one of us falls down on that, it hurts the others very much.
It's devastating to everyone.
Yes.
The kid who's on drugs, the family who has to deal with it, the peripheral family, you know, and it's like, why? What is so wrong with your life right now that you need to anesthetize yourself with drugs, you know?
Yes, and I think that kids will often come back with the expression, well, I'm bored, I have nothing else to do. Well, let's talk about all the things, okay, that there are to do, okay?
Right.
Let's turn that discussion around into a positive link.
Keeping them involved in doing something.
Yes.
Keeping them busy is a huge thing.
And chores are good for them.
Oh,
Absolutely.
It's not just chores. Keeping them involved in something they're interested in, something that they have a passion about. Yeah, one of the things that we do in the classroom, name one thing you're interested in. And I do gymnastics, I play soccer, I do all these positive things. And one of the things I point out to the children is that
we have to close very shortly.
Okay. Well, one of the things I point out is I don't hear any of you saying, I like to do drugs. I like to hurt my body.
Good ending point. I don't like to do drugs, okay.
Yes.
So I want to thank you, Lisa, so much for being with us, PJ for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
And our viewing audience, thank you so much. And make sure that you tune in next week because we'll have a brand new program, brand new guests, and we just thank you for being with us. Take care and have a good day.